tax to pay, I'm getting, you know,
Right.
to give that break doesn't seem to be fair to me as a taxpayer. Because my tax is $54 each year.
Right.
And if the people who rented, who own that property, own the house, own the rental property, not gonna pay an increase in taxes, then that burden falls on the rest of us to carry the load. And I'm not sure I understand the rationale for doing it. Certainly, don't understand it's fair for me as a taxpayer. So unless there's some serious explanation in terms of why that makes sense, then I would be concerned about that. And I would also want to know why it's necessary.
Okay.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Though I have always advocated for affordable housing and won't stop, think that we need affordable housing, but as a person who invests in real estate, own rental property, I'm not out there asking that you abate my taxes. I think that most people, I think Mr. Sampson is a businessman, I think Mr. Jacob is a businessman at some point. When you make those financial decisions and make that investment, right, you need to have certain things in place to know that it's going to be a profitable business. It may be enough profit, but people are going to make money off this deal. And I just don't think that the city is in any financial position, at least in the issues that why are we even consider even offering it in tax? We get all the tax that we can get. We got a lot of stuff. We have stuff that has been taken off the books and the rolls as it is. And so that's been one of the constraints that we've had. That's one of the discussions that we've had in many council meetings as to looking for new revenue, be it from utilities, be it from taxes, ad valorem, but we need all the tax money that we can get. I say it's hurting for tax money, though we appreciate the development. And if people can afford to put 100 unit or $15 million project together, they mean they got the money, they can afford to pay the land taxes. I'm not asking any discount on my 20, 30 units. And if you're gonna give a discount on those units, I definitely want one on my units, Mayor.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So is there a presentation on this or do an update? Okay, Mr. McKenna?
Good evening, Council.
Yes.
To represent the Greater Lake City CDC and the Sweetwater Project, my co-developer, Mr. Brian Finney from HTG.
Good evening. My name is Brian Finney. I'm with the Housing Press Group. I'm the Senior Vice President and the lead developer on this project here in Lake City. I originally thought tonight that I requested that we meet with you so we could give you a project update. So, one of the biggest flaws in development is that sometimes there's a disconnection between communicating with the development, communicating with our political leadership and the community. So I thought tonight I wanted to give you a project status. And the bottom line is that the project status is positive. We still expect to build 84 units of affordable housing. We still will have an amenities package with a private park, pool, fitness center, and community gardens. And our financing structure is 90% done. 90% done. Our total project is going to come in somewhere a little bit over $19.4 million. We have approval from Chase Manhattan Bank, $5 million approval for the Housing Finance Corporation, additional $400,000 approval for the Housing Finance Corporation. Palm Beach County has given us an approval of $1.5 million. We got additional last week. We got additional financial approval for the Housing Finance Corporation. My company is leaving $1 million. Investors, county is still by $8.4 million in addition to some subsidies from CRA. The reason why all these institutions have made a commitment that Florida Housing provides billions of affordable housing. What happens is that Florida Housing we have a housing problem. So, well, I'd like to tell my ownership. Testing 1, 2, 3. Better. Sorry. Did you hear me, or do I do a little start over again?
Let me fix that. Sorry. Love that.
So while I'd like to sit here before all of you and my ownership team and say that we're responsible, my team's responsible for this great work and raising all this capital, we can't take credit for it. Florida Housing has bent over backwards to make this happen, and they will continue to support us. Before I'd like to, I heard some comments a second ago about tax abatement or deferrals. I'd like to, if I may, just for a second, begin to address that from our perspective. I am 90% done raising monies to make a $19 million investment in this community. Any investment that we make, any investment, improves real estate values, begins appreciation, and triggers development. That's a fact. It does. I am a specialist. I do my deals in low-income areas. That's what I do. I do it every day. I live it. So any investment you get is positive. Now let's talk about abatement versus deferral. At some point in time, we'd like to have a discussion with the city about a deferral. Case in point, right now the property in question generates $700 a year in taxes. When we implement our project, we will generate $50,000 a year in annual taxes. A deferral we would ask for is to say, listen, can we split that? Can we generate, can we go 50-50? We generate $25,000, and at the end of 15 years, what we deferred, we will pay you in a one lump sum payment. What that does, if I were to get that approved, I would leave this room right now, call my team, and say, listen, let's start the project. If I got that approved here today, remember, so my financing is not quite complete. I'm 90% away from getting it financed, because what I would do is take that increment that we don't spend on taxes, borrow additional bank money to complete the project, and I'm ready to go. You know, from the time I get approval of my financial structure, I figured it would be 6 months to getting my permits and do what I have to do in the city. After 6 months, I'm in the ground, and in 14 months, I'm complete. Time is real important, because I see some interesting economic things happening to this country in the next few months. But God is good, because we are ready to proceed. And any help you can give us to bring this project over the finish line as soon as possible would be much appreciated, because we need affordable housing. We need affordable housing that is managed well. Managed well. And the other note of this is, of the $19 million, we're not asking the city to guarantee it. We're not asking the CDC to guarantee it. The Housing Trust Group will guarantee construction, development, and all aspects of the projects. That's what we do. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got some questions, Mr. Mayor. So I have a couple of questions. One, the presentation didn't speak about a deferral. It was all about a abatement or a forgiveness. And so if we're talking about a deferral for a 15-year period, I calculated that roughly you be about $40,000 a year in city ad valorem. But there would be no abatement on the fire assessment, I believe.
The concept came up. It's subject to discussions with the city. I mean, the school board. I mean, there's certain elements. In one of my former lives, I made a mistake and became a city manager for 2 years. So I went through that. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, we will sit down and try to figure out what is best for all parties, and we will be reasonable. But we just want to move the project forward.
I think a discussion with a lump sum payment that the city's made whole is something we could discuss. We have real issues though, because the $700 tax is sitting on the property now. That property costs the city $0 in maintenance of road, $0 in making sure a kid doesn't get hit in the street by putting signs up. Once we build 84 units, then there's going to be some costs associated. And so our main thing is making sure, at least from my perspective, is that when we get into the project, we're getting at least enough revenue in to offset the cost we've got coming in.
The most I would be thinking about is a 50-50 split. We'd start the discussions there and see where we go from there. Because even though you are absolutely correct, that does bring some maintenance costs. The impact of the project changes the values of all the other projects, which has a long-term effect on the tax base, positive. So it's basically a quid pro quo.
I would hope so. I've seen it go with negative values too. We can look right here. I can give you an example of one where you draw a little circle around it, the values have plummeted. So I think the management piece is going to be crucial. Now, I've looked at your other developments. They look different. So I think you guys do a good job managing the developments that I've seen. So
We won awards for our management.
yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And I think the amenity package will be helpful. Another question I had when I was looking at it, you were talking about the financing piece and how close you are. Now, I got a chance to watch when you presented this to the county, and I didn't think they had a tentative approval. It sounded like they were thinking about it.
Actually, it's interesting. They gave us a preliminary resolution. They gave us a preliminary approval for $3 million. We then had a meeting with Florida Housing and all our banks, and they announced in the meeting, and I did know this, that they could not exceed more than 1.5 million. So we had to go back and sharpen our pencils, and that's where we put them in at 1.5 million. But I am confident that with our discussions here tonight and with them coming up with maybe not quite $1.5 million, I'm still ready to move the deal forward. It's not going to be as nice. Well, it's going to be. We produce an excellent product, but we're going to have to sharpen our pens and find ways to save costs. And in fact, we're going to have to probably defer our fees. That's probably we're going to take a hit, but this is an important project for the state of Florida in many ways. So, and HTG's relationship with Florida Housing is very important to my company, and we will do what we have to do to make them pleased with our efforts.
Thank you.
Well, all right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, next is new business and item 3, Sally Mae J. Parkson, and we have Mr. Biden, Mr. Warren, signed up for that. Y'all want to speak?
Mr. Mayor, councilman, same person, same address. I want to speak to this item. I didn't attend the last CRA advisory committee meeting, but I did watch it on YouTube. And when I watched the meeting on YouTube, I was somewhat taken back and surprised. It's almost as if for the past months that the advisory committee didn't realize that we had discussion about a sign at Sally Mae Jerry Park, not a sign on the park, but a sign at the location at the intersection of Long and Marion Street. Part of the discussion that I heard and justification for perhaps looking at putting a sign on Main Street by the customer service was that there's more traffic there. The comment was made that, well, you put it there for everybody as opposed to a certain part of town. Well, that comment suggests that by putting the sign at the corner of Long and Marion, it serves a certain part of town. The sign serves the community. And I would argue, Mayor, that there's twice as much local traffic on Marion Street going north and south past potential locations for the sign than you're going to find on Main Street. Point an example. If you're going north on Main Street, once you pass the city bond area, you get into 5 Point. That's a concentration of people there. It's not vacant land. There's a lot of people there. Those people comes into town down Marion Street. If they're going to the VA hospital, they're gonna keep straight. If they're going to Wendy's, they're gonna keep straight. The possibility of them turning and going over to Main Street is kind of slim. And if they do that, most of them that does that, man, they go down to Long and turn red because they don't want to turn on Baskin Nurse, because they turn on Baskin Nurse when you get to Main Street, it's difficult to turn left. So those of us who drive will not recognize you want to get to the lake, because the lake facilitates travel. So to suggest that there's going to be more visibility there is disingenuous, because there's no data, there was traffic data that would support that. I stood on the corner of Main and 90, I stood on the corner of Marion and 90, and I can tell you the traffic, local traffic, is twice as much on Marion Street than it is on Main Street. So in addition to that, Mayor, the city council budgeted for this particular sign to be at that location. You know, those of us who advocated for improvement in that area after Mr. Green made a suggestion, you know, we've been bragging about it, talking about we're gonna have this sign, it's gonna be an improvement, gonna bring some attention to North Lake City. And so to change that now, and for the rationale that we use, I don't think it's fair. In fact, I don't think it's justified. You know, to suggest that more people are gonna see it at the location by customer service, it just don't hold water. There's no way that you can tell me that people who live south of 90 drive down Main Street, just the view. You know, if they're not going to White Springs or to the interstate, there's no reason for them to go there. So, but on Marion Street, there's a lot more traffic, and suggest that the sign serves the same purpose by being at the corner of Long and Marion, frankly, is I said disingenuous, and that's being kind, because that just doesn't hold water. Everybody see it. If you go to Richardson over the weekend here recently, all kind of traffic out there. You go to Richardson during the weekend or during the weekdays, not all kind of traffic there. And it's people from all over the city, not just precinct 10, not just the area over there. And Councilman, I know you give me, I appreciate the courtesy, Mel. If you consider Mr. Hill's northwest part of this district, folk who live in that area, they're not going to come out to Main Street and go south if they're on their way to if they're on their way to not Publix, Harvest, Aldi's, they're on their way to Walmart, they're on their way to the hospital. It makes sense for them to go over to Lake Jeffrey or to Baskin-Nars or then over to 90. So that traffic, they don't even go out, they don't even take that route to pass by. So my point is this, man, I mean, the council voted for it, the community was expecting it to be there, and I would suggest that that's where the sign need to go.
Right. Before Mr. Warren comes up, I spoke with Brian a little while ago, and he was getting back with the sign people because of the updates and the increasing cost. And because of shortage of help, they've not been able to get those numbers back to him, so there's nothing we'll have as far as a firm number tonight. But he should have it in the next few days. Did I say that right, Brian?
Yes, sir, sometime this
Okay.
week.
All right, Mr. Warren.
Now, my conversation is not about how much it's going to cost. That's a discussion that you all need to have. The reason I got it because there was a conversation about the possibility of putting the sign at another location. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Sylvester Warren, Council. In the spirit of not trying to be redundant and piggybacking off what Mr. Bowden said, Mayor, I guess what frustrates me the most, and it tends to frustrate the community. And I think sometimes people wonder why council meetings end up being chaotic. And they think sometimes it's the citizens. But in many cases, Mayor, is the mayor and it's the council by saying one thing and promising one thing and doing another. I remember Mr. Bowden wasn't feeling well, couldn't be here. Another issue came up in the city council. He left home, came up here, and we asked you directly, Mayor, in the council, when you were discussing taking the sign back to the subcommittee, you said it was just a issue of formality, right? But the issue of formality has turned into a conversation at the subcommittee and not coming back in conversation to our community saying that there's a possibility of wanting a sign or that particular sign moved to a different location, being Main Street. Here's what I say, Mayor. I have no problem. The community have no problem. The activists and whatever you think, you would not find me fighting you on putting a sign up at Main Street. I think the city is big enough for 2 signs. Right. And so people will support having a sign on Main Street just as well as we support having a sign on Marion Street and Long Street. I think if anything happens and if there needs to be a sign, if there is a appetite for a sign on Main Street, then 2 signs come to Lake City. But to take 1 sign away from something that we've discussed, that we've had workshops on, and we've had all this conversation about, Mayor, would be a flag on the play, and it will cause a lot of unsportsmanlike conduct. So I think the right thing to do in the spirit of righteousness is to do what you promised to do and what you've been leading the community on about what you're gonna do. And I think that's how we have peaceful meetings. That's how we build, and that's how we lead to success, and that's how we lead to doing collaborative negotiations for both sides, the community and the council. And I hope you take the leadership on that, Mayor, and assure the community that has been waiting on that happens. Thank you.
I do agree with that it should be one there, maybe somewhere else. Vanessa George? You're good, okay.
Well, Mayor, I'd like to speak on it. Here again, the CRA is trying to take money or take funds from north of town. That's not right. I don't care how you cut it, it's not right. Now, throughout this whole situation, the sign was agreed to go to Sanitary Park. Now, certain individuals, excuse me, want to take that same sign off the north side of town and put it on Main Boulevard or whatever. That's wrong. I don't care how you cut it, that's wrong. And I will not support that. Like I say, I'm repeating myself, but again, the CRA is taking funds from the north side of Lake City, trying to put it somewhere. That's all I have.
Okay. I don't think we have anything to take action on tonight. We don't have numbers. So when Brian gets those numbers, he can get back with us, so we can do this in a couple of weeks.
Again, on taking numbers, the sign was budgeted for Sanitary. So why, I mean, the numbers are important, but why is there a discussion about location? That's my problem. Why is there a discussion about the location? And the location been determined.
Did something change after the agenda? Because the agenda says sign at the corner of Marion and Long. Okay, I just want to make sure, because I missed all that. I didn't go to the last CRA meeting, but
I think the mayor can bring you up to speed if, Mayor.
I know there was discussion.
Mayor,
But
let's not act like we're having, like the community has showed up and we're having a conversation about something that's not real. There was a conversation about not putting the sign on Marion Street. We talked about this, Mayor. I got cell phone records. We talked about a conversation that took place that you all were not going to originally put the sign on Marion Street, that you wanted to move it over to.
Conversation that was never made, and as I've said, I'm in support of it being a side of my head.
Right, but that's that, and I think that's what Mr. Sampson needed to hear, because it would appear, Mr. Sampson, that we're up here talking about something that's totally
it's not on the agenda.
Right. But there was a conversation, and we've talked to the mayor, at least I have, and I think Mr. Bowden have, that there was a real conversation that took place of derailing the sign from going on Long and Marion to go to Main Boulevard. Right. And there was gonna be a motion made tonight, supposedly it was in the conversation.
Well, I didn't vote for anything at that meeting. There was a discussion about it, I'm still for it.
So we can leave here tonight assured that we're gonna have the sign on Marion and Long
I can assure you, I'm gonna vote for it to be on Marion. But everybody else knows I can't promise.
Well, I think, Mr. Mayor, so now maybe I'm incorrect here, but I thought there was already a budget allocated for a set sign in a set location.
Right.
So I would think that, you know, to move that, there would have to be a motion to change that location to another location.
Right.
So I don't see that happening. So the numbers we're getting, so my question is, the numbers that Brian's getting, is it for putting a sign at Marion and Long? Is that what he's working on?
Or a sign.
Or just a sign?
Just a sign itself.
He don't know.
That makes sense.
All he's trying to do is find out what the sign costs and what the requirements are. And, then,
All I'm doing is, they asked me to downsize the sign a little bit. I'm not moving it nowhere. I didn't get quotes to move it. I'm just doing what CRAC asked me to do. They give me a budget, said it's gotta be within that, and that's what I'm doing. I didn't have a company come back and, cause if we move it to another location, they're going to come back and give us another quote for a different area.
Yeah.
But it's the same one, it's just a smaller compact version is what they want me to look for. Well, that's what I'm doing anyway, so unless I'm wrong.
So again, they're gonna divert from the sign that was originally agreed on to something small.
Yes, sir. That's what CRAC did, not me.
well, we still haven't decided on the sign. The price has gone up and it's been so long since he's got the quote. He said he needed to go back and find out what it is, and we said, get quotes on, but, you know, if we change the size of the sign, if we change all the bells and whistles on it, you know, what's the sign cost today?
And it'll be multiple, the sign size isn't gonna be multiple, just this is the budget we have, this is what you can do for that amount.
Well, as of Friday, he told me they would still honor the signs prices that we got on the 2 quotes already. But then, like I said, everybody wanted this little bit smaller sign, so they're having to go back to the drawing board and look at that.
Everybody.
Well, CRAC does that.
Brian, I'm not talking to you, but
Okay.
this is exactly what I'm talking about. They agreed on the size of the sign. Now they want it downsized. I don't care how y'all cut that, that's wrong.
So, one more clarification, so they are willing to stick with the pricing from the first.
As of Friday, when I talked to Cody, I get something in writing, but DevTech with the sign company said they're still in agreement to do it at that time. So I get an updated quote, that would be just call them and say, just update this, send this back to me.
So there's a possibility by updating that quote, we'll get a smaller sign for more money, since they were willing to go with that old quote when the prices were lower, possibly. I mean, because today it's gonna be more expensive than it was back then.
Well, they still got us locked in at a certain price right now. They're still going to honor that price, is what I'm understanding from that conversation Friday. But then I was told to divert from that one. This is what money they're looking at, and what can we take off to bring the sign to a smaller price?
You might not remember the first quotes we got, how much were those quotes?
I think one was 42 and one was 40, something like that. I can't remember off my head.
And do you remember, how much did we allocate? 43? 45? If those quotes are within,
Within that amount, what was talked about in the CRA committee meeting was the signage for all of the parks was inclusive. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. In that, I think it was budgeted for, I believe it was 45,000, I believe it was. And the name signs for all of the park was inclusive in that $45,000, along with the sign that you was talking about from San Jerry's Park. That was my understanding.
My original deal was I had 45,000 to work with to get the sign. Now the signs for City of Lake City, Welcome City of Lake City, and all the parks was a totally opposite, a total add-on to that. So, because they're from a whole totally different company, they're not from this company. So, I just do what y'all direct me to do.
so do we have the quotes on those other signs yet, or?
I'm working on them, because when I come with the quotes I had, they want something a little bit bigger. They want 36 by 36 sign. So Like I said, again, I'm just doing what I'm told.
And that's a separate issue from this. I mean,
Yeah.
we thought we could get it all done for the budget, but that's a different quote, what we're talking
Well, let's finish this thought first. I got some thoughts on those other signs too, but, I would be for moving forward with what we have budgeted for the project to begin with, only because, I mean, from my perspective, that was the amount we have budgeted for that one particular sign. I mean, that's the way I understood it when we were voting for it. I do think we need signage in all the parks. I think we should proceed with that also. But I think the 45 we had set aside, as long as we don't break that, I think that's what we should spend on this sign at this park. That's just my
about.
perspective.
If they'll stick with that quote,
Especially they'll stick with the quote because prices, how much the price has gone up? That's been almost a year ago, maybe over a year ago.
It was back in, I think, August or September when I got that close.
Well, if money was gonna be spent on that dump across the street, we wouldn't be having this type of a conversation. But it's not being spent on that dump across the street. It's being spent on north of Lake City. And the same people that's for that dump across the street is against North Lake City. Again, Brian, I'm looking at you,
Okay,
but I'm not talking to you.
yes, sir.
But again, that's all I have.
well, I wasn't, I didn't know that they would stick with the old quote. I thought we didn't have to get a new quote. So if they'll stick with it, we can take action.
But more,
Didn't we already-
the day was they're fixing to go up with the, well, that's, I was notified that day that meeting was. So somebody had to make a decision on what we wanted to do.
Right.
Well, so we already took action to approve that previously. So do we have to do something new or can we move forward with that quote from that time frame?
This advisory committee is just an advisory committee. We make this decision.
Not been any official action on the sign. That's
That's why I had to get it back.
that's why it went back. Yes, it's only been discussion. There's not been any official action on the sign.
So if you want to go with what they got the quote. It's up to y'all.
I would make that motion
Which motion?
to go with the quote we have for the sign, not to exceed the 45,000.
Second.
Okay. I've got somebody, did you want to speak on this now?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, real quick, come up. We've already made a motion and all that, so we usually don't take it, but that's fine.
I just want to address the elephant in the room. There seems to be some dishonesty within the subcommittee. And there seems to be that the chairman of that subcommittee does not know how to run the subcommittee and does not know the form and how things are advised to this committee. For numbers to be bounced around, nobody knows what was voted on. For us to be having this discussion, seems like the subcommittee is out of line. Who's going to get the subcommittee in line and let them know what they do and they don't do? Because they're moving stuff around that y'all don't know about. And it just seems like some dishonesty. Let your no's be no's and your yeses be yeses. Tell the truth. That's all I want to say.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
One second, I'll speak to that, that this gentleman just raised. From the subcommittee, there was no recommendation to bring to this group. And that was one of the purposes of the what you call the subcommittee. We bring a recommendation to this body, and there was no recommendation to bring because the recommendation from the committee was for Mr. Bryan to get an updated cost because he said that due to a lack of time, that the cost has escalated. So we needed a new cost to bring to this committee. That's why there was a lag in there. Now, if you were at that meeting, I think you would have understood all the facts and there would be no assumption, but that's what happened in the meeting. And that's why I couldn't bring anything here if it wasn't a recommendation from the committee, because that's the job of the committee, is to bring the recommendation to this group. And there was none, not in terms of a monetary recommendation.
Just some unnecessary conversation. Understood.
All right, there's been a motion and a second, any discussion by council? Ms. Sykes, you call the roll.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Chairman Whitt?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, one final comment. That, motion that we just entered, that excludes the other signage. That's
Right,
specifically for
we addressed it,
signage. Okay. I don't want that to be misunderstood
right,
in that way.
all right.
Mr. Mayor, before we move on, I don't know what the next item on the agenda is, but I think it might be a good time to start talking about those signs. I know, he's working on prices on that as well. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. I know there was someone that had brought up the idea, and I thought it might be a good idea that there would be some kind of, maybe we get, maybe a fifth grade or some class and go across the schools and get some kind of competition to design something to put on the sign. I think that would be a good idea to get some involvement from the community. I understand this now, these signs are going to be at each of the parks, is that correct?
Correct.
And so by each of the parks, that's like every park the city owns.
Right.
I-
Some of that would be the CRA.
Yeah, I would think so. So some of it we can use CRA funds and some we couldn't.
Correct.
That makes sense.
Would you like that to go to the committee?
I think so.
Yeah, Brian gave us some examples, maybe get with him and see what he was showing us, and all that. Bring it back to the next meeting. Okay, that's all I have for the CRA. It says the next meeting is June 21st. But see what the action we need to take. All right, so we'll transition into. Okay, we won't stop. Yes, we're adjourned. It says 21st, but probably it'll be when we have something.
Yeah.
I mean,
He has my email.
I'd like to call the March 21st, 2022 meeting of the City Council for the City of Lake City to order. If everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation to be given by Councilmember Jeff Hill Jr.
Allegiance to the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us to see another day, Father. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask that you continue to guide us and lead us in the way that you would have us to go, Father. And Father, we ask that you just watch over this meeting. May we make the best decision for our city. And may we just continue to bless us, Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Hey, Ms. Sykes, call the roll.
Mr. Hill.
Here.
Mr. Jefferson.
Here.
Mr. Sampson.
Here.
Mayor Witt.
Here.
Mr. Dial.
Here.
Mr. Coberline.
Here.
Chief Butler.
Here. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the Lake City Council has opened its public meeting since 1968. The city code has prohibited any person from making personal and pertinent inflammatory remarks or becoming boisterous like yelling or making audible comments from the audience constitutes boisterous conduct. Such conduct will not be tolerated. There's only one approved manner of addressing the council that is to be recognized and speak from the podium. As a reminder, persons are not openly carry a handgun or carry a concealed weapon or firearm while the governing body is meeting. Again, I'd like to ask everybody to be civil and no personal comments toward other people. Be respectful and let's take care of business and do a good job with it. I have a proclamation. It's called Child Abuse Prevention and Volunteer Appreciation Month, April 2022. Whereas April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and April 17th to the 23rd, 2022 is National Volunteer Week. Whereas the Florida Guardian Ad Litem Office provides representation for abused, abandoned, and neglected children in dependency court cases. And whereas the Florida Guardian Ad Litem Office currently best interest model of representation is nationally recognized as best practice because it uses an advocate manager and trained volunteer or pro bono attorney. And whereas for more than 40 years, the Florida Guardian Ad Litem Office has provided the most vulnerable children in Florida with an adult from their community who is consistent, positive presence in the child's life. Whereas the Florida Guardian Ad Litem program provides the highest quality community advocacy and legal representation to protect each child's right for best interest. And whereas for more than 30 years, the Florida Guardian Ad Litem Office has provided independent legal advocacy for hundreds of thousands of vulnerable children located throughout Florida. Whereas in 2021, the Florida Guardian Ad Litem had more than 13,000 volunteers, and those volunteers advocated for more than 37,000 children. Whereas the Guardian Ad Litem program in the 3rd Judicial Circuit serving Columbia, Swanee, Hamilton, Lafayette, Dixie, Madison, and Taylor counties oversees a volunteer base of over 60 people. And these volunteers advocate for more than 500 children in the 3rd Judicial Circuit. Whereas Guardian Ad Litem pro bono attorneys sacrifice time worth over $3 million annually to the state of Florida. Whereas the Guardian Ad Litem volunteers sacrifice time and mileage worth millions of dollars annually to the state of Florida. And whereas the Guardian Ad Litem volunteers have provided an invaluable service to dependency court judges. Whereas studies show that children with Guardian Ad Litem are more likely to be adopted, half as likely to re-enter foster care, less likely to spend time in long-term foster care, more likely to have a permanency plan, and more likely to perform well in school. Now, therefore, in recognition of the Florida Guardian Ad Litem Office and their commitment and dedication to individuals and families and communities everywhere, through service, delivery, research, education, and legislative advocacy. I, Stephen M. Witt, Mayor of the City of Lake City, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2022 as Child Abuse Prevention and Volunteer Appreciation Month. And I thank Ms. Lauren Bounds here that represents the Guardian Ad Litem program. And for many years in my practice, I did dependency cases, and the Guardian Ad Litem are invaluable, where the department represents the state and we represent the parents. Guardian Ad Litem represents the children. Okay, we have minutes from the March 7th, 2022 session.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion for approval of the March 7, 2022 minutes.
Been a motion second to approve the March 7th minutes of public. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is approval of the agenda. We have two emergency items, and they will be at items 22 and 23, and they are Resolution 2022-2032 and Resolution 2022-33.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion for approval of agenda as amended to add item 22 and 23.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, say
Aye. Aye.
aye. Opposed? A person wishing to address council, Mavis Georgialis.
Good evening.
Amen.
I think most of you know me, I'm Mavis Georgianis. I'm chairman of the Planning and Zoning Board. I had promised I would be very fast, so I will talk quickly this evening. Over the changes that have gone on in the city and personnel over the past year, you're all aware of it. Planning and zoning, both boards and the agency, we fell down to where we were below a quorum. We had missed meetings. Thank you very much. We're now up to 6 members, 1 more to go. And then 3 of us can take a vacation and still have a quorum. During all of this mix-up, are y'all familiar with this?
Oh, yeah.
This is our Bible. This is the Planning and Zoning Bible. In reviewing this, we are supposed to have an orientation program for new members. We desperately need that. We're working on putting one together right now. Maybe back in the sands of time, there was one. In going over that and getting brand new members on the board, we have been hit boom, boom, boom 3 times with something that we need help with, what we are interpreting and how to handle. The first was the paving of Railroad Street. That was the last historic street, Historic Preservation Agency. That was the last historic brick street in Lake City. We paved it. There was no certificate of approval requested. We started getting calls. And when I say we, there were only 2 of us there at that time, members on the board. People were really upset about it. I have asked numerous times, how did we do that? I can get no answer. Did it just fall through the cracks? Nobody came and got a certificate of approval. It was in the historic district. The second one, very much the same thing. The cutting down of the trees along Marion Street. Again, in the historic district, we were never broached for a certificate of approval. We never had any questions. We didn't know to even ask any questions. We got calls. What are y'all doing cutting down the trees on Marion Street? We said, who's cutting down trees on Marion Street? The third one, Lord help me, y'all just talked about, is the historic sign up north of town. In your last minutes, that it was mentioned as being moved. Where do you plan to move it to except at the entrance to the historic district? If you're planning on changing the historic district, there's paperwork to be done there. We have not received any information to request a certificate of approval or to be involved in that at all. That is the historic district. Why would you want to move the sign somewhere else? Help. What are we doing? How do we handle
We do need to do better, get the thing back to the advisory committee. We should be doing that.
So it just fell through the cracks. Can we help in any way? I don't know.
But we are, and I think we need to, from here forward, and make sure everything goes to the proper committees at the proper time.
Right.
They did, so somehow.
That's it for me.
Thank
Was that quick enough, Audrey?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, would you entertain me for a moment?
Yes, I was fixing to call you up.
Be loose on the time with me if you would, Mayor, because I want to respond to something that was just mentioned about the historical sign. So I get a lot of phone calls. People think that Sylvester wanted to show up to the meeting and just try to pick fights and find things to talk about. No, people call me, right? And so I knew this sign issue about moving the so-called historical sign came up in the subcommittee. This is a few people who are anti about moving that sign from Murrow Street down to closer to 100 and Miriam, right? Nobody came up here and cried when they paved the east side of Murrow Street, back where Mr. Pete's was at, back where the pool hall was at. So that was historic. But I guess it didn't have enough historic value because of maybe where it was located and all the black business that was on that particular street. So, man, I hope this is not an attempt by
The peanut gallery? What's wrong? Oh, Mayor, people can't be walking up behind me, Mayor. I'm a very paranoid guy.
Oh, but this is historic.
Mayor,
Okay. Mayor,
Mayor, see,
one person at the podium at a
go ahead,
time.
Mayor. I mean, it's y'all world, Mayor. Y'all go ahead.
No,
I mean, this.
No, you were making it sound like discrimination. It's
Man,
not. This is.
This George Alice,
This is.
this George Alice, he's got the podium right now. Okay. Come
I
up.
mean, if I would've did that, y'all been called for point over.
No, I probably, but I was fixing to stop her just then. She came on up, we stopped it. She's gone. Come speak, please.
I mean, can I?
Sure.
Man, we made a deal. This council, we had a workshop, we voted to move the sign. Are we still in agreement as men and as adults, that we agreed to move that particular sign?
We've already voted.
Thank you.
All right, did you want to, this is your time for public comment. Oh, you
Give me
want,
a minute to let Mr. Bowden go and some other people and then call me back up. Give me a minute just to.
all right,
if
Mr.
you don't
Bowden.
mind, man.
I'm not. Peanut gallery.
Ma'am,
May I
ma'am,
just-
Ma'am.
Ma'am.
This George Alice, please sit down.
We're talking historic district.
Man, you do not let me behave like this.
I didn't let her.
I've seen council members call point of order on me, and then I'm in here being extremely nice, being
I know.
extremely respectful,
You have.
abiding by all the rules, and then people are heckling me, and then there's no consequence. And then you would wonder if I got up here and got on 10 as to how people are treating me. And you're doing nothing about it.
I did.
Why is it, man?
I did. I just told her to go sit down. Mr. Bowden, did you want to speak?
Yes, sir. On a couple of different issues, Mayor. A couple of hours ago, I heard bam, 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 bam. And my son, that sounded like gunshots. So I went to a few seconds, went to the door, didn't see who was doing the shooting, didn't see a car going, wasn't able to identify the car. 30 minutes or so later, the police came to the back door. In fact, they had done shooting. Keystons found right on the street right behind me, FAMU, you know, two right behind my house, one right next to a senior citizen house right down the street. I mentioned that just to bring up the point that the shootings are still going on. Last week on the police department Facebook page, they posted about a shooting over by, Jake, help me out, Cedar Park.
Right.
And somebody responded, they said, well, it was just a shooting, nobody was hit. And that says something about where we are in this community. When the response is that it was just a shooting. So people have it by it just being a shooting, but nobody was hit. So I hope that the city council is paying some attention there, continuing to have dialogue with the police chief about stepping up whatever they need to do to make some changes. You know, I don't think there's been any solution to any of the murders yet. So I want to keep that out there on the forefront. And since we're talking about the law enforcement, Mayor, I read in the paper this weekend where the interim city manager decided to appoint permanent police chief and fire chief. I do have some concerns about that. I do think that in the search for a city manager for something as important as the police chief of this community, given that if you Google Lake City now and say, Lake City safe, I don't care what state you go to, they're gonna say it's one of the unsafe cities in the whole state of Florida and the whole country. So that's a fact, and I don't make that up. So I think that it's problematic and may prove problematic for the next city manager when he or she come on board and having to deal with someone who was appointed as police chief by the interim city manager. It's not to say that Mr. Dodden was not within his powers and his right to do it. I think, though, however, that position should have remained vacant until you got a city manager. And I'm not certain, Mr. Mayor, that the search process was expensive. It should have been to ensure equal opportunity. What I mean by that, if you need to do an in-house advertisement, a little advertisement within the Northeast Florida, then you're gonna get a small group of applicants. But if you go nationwide, you get a whole different set of applicants. And so I think by doing that, unintentionally, you kind of shut out the opportunity for other people to compete for the job. And the fact that someone was the assistant chief doesn't automatically make he or she chief material. If some people, assistant chief is what they can do, and I'm not saying that's the case with Mr. Butler. My criticism is that I don't think it was a fair process to open up for opportunities for other people to apply. That people of color, women, the gay folk, and I'm gonna say gay because the governor want me to say gay people and everybody else can apply for it. So, and the other thing I want to call your attention, man, I hadn't heard anybody talk about reapportionment and redistricting. Is that something that the city got to do? And if so, when the process is going to start?
Mr. May. It won't be this year. It'll have to be the next odd year.
So you don't have to do it then this year.
Well,
But it's too late.
I'm working on getting pricing on that. The pricing we got was way higher than I was anticipating. We're gonna have to put it out to bid probably
For what?
for the redistricting,
Okay,
for the proposal.
okay, all right.
Okay, Mr. Warren, did you want to address something else?
Mayor and Council, Sylvester Warren. Mayor, I think we had a conversation, and I don't hide anything. I had a conversation with Paul. I had a conversation with quite a few people. It's not right. Nothing about the process was transparent. And I thought with different people in leadership, people who made personal statements, people who made public statements, such as Paul Dow, that said that he would not make a major decision in filling those positions, even quoted in the paper saying that he would leave that to the permanent city manager. And this becomes the whole issue, Mayor. Again, you get frustrated if citizens come up here and they complain, and y'all call it name calling. I think that sometimes you do that because people don't want to be called out. And I don't find it to be name calling. I find it to be classifying certain behaviors, right? So Mr. Paul Dow lied, right? So if I said Mr. Paul Dow is a liar, I don't mean that Mr. Paul Dow, I'm name calling him, I'm talking about his behavior is classified as a liar. That, I'm making an example. I'm not calling Mr. Dow a liar. I'm just giving you an example of some things are not name calling. That's just how you perceive it. My issue is, Mr. Mayor, is why when Amy Fields and different other people were here, you were hell bent on not filling those positions, even when Mike was here. No interim city manager were gonna fill those type of positions. And now we have those positions filled. I got public records requests in. Was it a national search? How far did we look? I think Paul said it was only 2 applicants because I don't think the search was long enough, nor did the search go wide enough. And you didn't give everybody a fair opportunity who may be out there that may could have brought more experience, a better type of police chief to our community, you name it. But that shut down the particular process. And it leaves the permanent city manager, if we ever get one, based on how dramatized this council is with the community and the things that we do and don't stick to, that anybody ever want to come here. But I guess my bigger point is the new city manager, or the permanent city manager, will have an issue with probably having to go back and look and see whether or not that promotion is even correct or right. And why are we doing this, man? I know on the phone what upset me is you said that you were fine with it because you were straight with Butler. Like you know, Butler was fine with you, but that don't mean Butler is fine for everything else. That's just a personal opinion. And who all on the council was talked to about this decision? This is a major decision, Mayor. I mean, I got a problem, but for the simple fact, ain't nothing been done about the detectives that want me dead. The issue is sustained, and you know, I don't even get any conversation from the police department. You know, people want to kill me from the police department, and the administration don't care. People heckle me, the administration don't care. But if I say something about holding you all accountable all hell break loose. So you got some on law enforcement that want me dead. And other people that run around town on law enforcement and say all these things about me, but the administration does nothing. Or they sit on it.
That's Bonison is still under.
No, it's not an investigation. I'm telling you that the issue has been sustained. How is it still an investigation if it's sustained? I got a phone call saying it's sustained.
Okay, well, I'll look into it.
Well, he here now. Get him up into the police looking. It ain't that important.
No, it's just not proper.
You're right, man. When it comes to my safety and when it comes to, so what are we doing about the process of, you good with the hiring, the promotion, everything is fine, it's hunky-dory? People were not given a transparent process, because I know the format of hiring a police chief has been with the whole freaking committee.
In the past, it has been, and it's also been promoted or done without a committee.
Yeah, well,
many times.
Yeah, when it was time for Rudolph to get promoted, we seem to have forgot that process.
Okay. Very lenient with your time.
You weren't leaning when people were heckling me and approaching me from behind. You're right, Mel. It's your show, it's your world. But then we wonder why we get to certain points. But I want to go ahead and sit down. I appreciate your patience. I appreciate you giving me enough time to speak on the issue. I hope that I give some type of leadership response as to what Mr. Bowden and myself discussed with you.
All right. So, Mr. Lilker.
Thank you, Your Honor. Stu Loper, Columbia County Observer. I have a couple questions about the hiring of the police chief and the fire chief. And they're not directed at you, they're directed at the board. But the questions are really for Mr. Dye. I read in the mainstream media, and it was my understanding from coming to meetings last month or so, that Mr. Dial wasn't going to move anybody when he was interim city manager. Matter of fact, he wasn't even going to be the interim city manager because if Amy Fields left, he was going to leave with her, and he's still here. At least that's a mirage. It's a good, maybe it's his twin brother. But minds are made for changing, as we all know, so apparently he changed his mind. So my question through the city council is, and I've got courtesy of the Public Records Act and the clerk today, the email where he appointed Mr. Butler and the police chief, whose last name, I don't mean to be disrespectful, I can't pronounce, so I won't try until I learn. Promoted them in an email. I believe it said he thought it would be a good thing to do, and he clearly has that power as the interim city manager because his contract says he has all the duties of the city manager. So I think it would be nice. I don't know if he shared this with any of you. If he did and he polled the board, that's clearly illegal. So if he did, maybe he'd want to tell us. And if he didn't, maybe he'd want to tell us. But I'd like to know from Mr. Dial, as you now have 3 finalists for city manager. I'm not exactly sure where they came from. I'm still researching that, but you still have 3 finalists. And what was the rush to not give the city manager his chance to appoint a police chief and a fire chief? I'm not saying he's right or he's wrong, but I'd like to know his reasoning behind it. Thank you very much, Your Honor.
All right.
You can ask.
Well, I'm probably just our staff here. Approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? In presentation none, old business, we're to open public hearing. City Council Ordinance 2022-2216 on final reading. So why would you read that by title?
An ordinance of Wake City, Florida, correcting a scrivener's error in the legal description of certain property that was located in Columbia County, Florida, which was reasonably compact and contiguous to the boundaries of the city of Wake City, Florida, that was voluntarily annexed into the boundaries of the city of Wake City, Florida by ordinance number 2021-2207, pursuant to petition ANX 21-03, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Anybody wish to speak to the city council ordinance 2022-2216? All right, we'll close the public hearing, move to adoption of city council ordinance number 2022-2216 on final reading.
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of ordinance number 2022-2216 on its final reading.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion by council. Time to call the roll.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Webb?
Yes. Okay, next is item 7, discussion of possible action, city manager position. Ms. Norlock is supposed to appear by Zoom.
She's in the waiting room, sir.
You'll bring her in.
Hello.
Hi, council members. Hi, Mayor. How are you today?
I'm doing good.
Good. Good to see you again. Thank you for the time tonight to speak with you. We have, as you know, gone back out and recruited some additional candidates for the city manager position. And I'd like to share with you a little bit of information about specifically 3 of the candidates tonight. What I'm looking for, Mayor and council members, if you're inclined to, if you're ready to do so, the goal would be to schedule candidates for a video interview with the council, much like we did the last time around. We'd like to do that sooner than later for all the obvious reasons, but probably as the earliest we would want to do that is sometime next week if you're available. So I'm going to run through candidates real quick that I've put forth for you to review tonight. I'll tell you a little bit more about them, a little bit about what I know, and then we can talk through and decide if you want to talk to any of these by video. We can decide on that and then talk about what dates you may be available to do that.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go alphabetical here. I've got 3 candidates in particular that I want to talk to you about. The first is Troy Perry, and forgive me if I refer to him as Chief Perry, because in my work, if you've ever been a chief, you're always a chief, and it's hard for me not to call him chief. As you can see from his resume, he has worked primarily in the city of Riviera Beach. He started there in 1997 and served as in the fire department for several years. He served as fire chief there in 2010. As you can see, he had a couple of stints as an interim assistant city manager, 2008 and 2009. And then he retired out of the city in 2010, and the city reached out and brought him back as an interim fire chief in 2012 to 14. At that time, the city manager had some projects, some economic development projects that they couldn't get moved forward. And so once he finished his interim fire chief role in 14, the city manager moved him into a role of assistant to the city manager for economic development. He served in that capacity for 2 years, and then they were in need of a director of utilities. They have water and wastewater there, I believe. And he served in that capacity for a couple of years until he hired or helped them hire, excuse me, a director of utilities. And then at the time, they were going through some challenges and needed an interim manager. And he agreed to serve as interim in 2017. I don't know if you're familiar with Riviera Beach, but they've had their ups and downs as a city. And there was quite a bit of turmoil going on there in 2017. Had nothing to do with Mr. Perry, but he did he did get offered a job with the State of Florida Office of Criminal Conflict and Civil Regional Counsel, the 4th DCA region, as the Director of Operations and Facilities. They needed someone to come in and organize and put policies in place and set up rules and regulations and help with personnel and labor issues. 5 offices total. They had to get those set up. He helped with contracts, with building facilities, with IT issues, procurement, supplies, everything really to stand it up. They have about 100 employees in offices from Broward to Indian River, Martin, and St. Lucie counties. He reports to a director who in turn is appointed by the governor. So it kind of gives you a sense of where his role is right now. As I mentioned, he was working on a lot of different things there, a new facility, workflow, all kinds of operational things really that needed to happen with that organization. And I talked to him a little bit about his management style. Of course, he had over 26 years in with the fire service, but he said that that being a paramilitary type of organization where you give orders and people take orders, he learned a long time ago that you get a lot further with a participatory style of management. He had good relationships with the bargaining units there. He worked closely with city council. He seems to have a good grasp on how to navigate politics and how they affect what the city does and is trying to do. When he was assistant to the manager in economic development, there was I mentioned projects there that they couldn't really get pushed forward. And he was instrumental in making that happen. He was dedicated to doing that. He mentioned that he's been involved in getting funding from funding sources, whether it's grants or others. He's obviously managed budgets in his role, not only as fire chief, but beyond that. Talked about, being present at the state capitol and working the state capitol, if you will, for funding and for support as needed relative to their economic development process, working closely with the county, working closely with business owners, putting programs in place, funding. He was also involved in making their development process easier. They made some changes to their codes. They expedited permitting and just really made a developer-friendly organization. And that really boosted their economic development. He did say they redid, while he was in that role as Director, Economic Development Focus, that he was involved in a project where they were redoing their municipal marina and an event center that they had. They did quite a few public-private partnerships, 3 Ps. And there were some things that they had that were actually losing money that they actually turned around and it became profitable. When he was over utilities, interim utilities director, he said he had to step in. The director there was terminated for some reason, so he had to step in quickly. He recognized who the experts were in the organization and in the field in general, in water and in engineering, and sort of pulled everybody together until they could hire a director. And as I mentioned, they had water and wastewater there. I don't think I mentioned his education. He does have a master's degree in public administration from Nova Southeastern. He also has a bachelor's of public administration from Barry University. When we talked about salary, he would like to be in the 130s in order to consider the position. He did not tell me where he was or where he has been relative to salary. And as you know, I cannot ask that. So I asked him what his career goals at this point, and he said long-term, he'd like to be in a municipality. He enjoyed the ACM role, the assistant city manager role, assistant to the city manager and assistant city manager, as well as city manager level. He feels like he has a lot more time left in his career to work. He loves government, and he wants a challenge to help an organization move to the next level. When I asked if he knew anyone at Lake City, he indicated he did not know anyone, that he had traveled through and around and by Lake City and knows the agency or knows the community somewhat. He did indicate that he would, if he possibly could, he would be coming to Lake City in the recent weeks, maybe last few days. I'm not sure. I haven't confirmed that, but he would be taking a trip to get to know the community, just to make sure this is the right place for him as far as his next move. There's no roadblocks for taking the position if offered to him. And as far as relocating, he's committed to doing that. He's not wanting to stay in the area that he's in. He thinks Lake City is a great area. Nothing in his background that I need to report. When I ask him, never been terminated. There's been some lawsuits filed against him for termination of some employees. They filed for wrongful termination, which, he gave me details on what it was, and it certainly wasn't wrongful, but it was thrown out at some point. And again, he had very good relationships with the unions, so they trusted him when it came to disciplinary action also. I know that one of the council members had shared that he was interested in anybody who was looking for jobs elsewhere. Mr. Perry did not indicate he's looking elsewhere. So I have no reason to believe he's in another process. I did specifically tell candidates to let me know if they are, so I can let you know. That said, I think he's certainly someone worth talking to. I have found in my background work that I've done over the years that in recruitment work I've done over the years that fire chiefs and police chiefs have a certain leadership style that often enables them to transition to city management and be very successful at doing that. I do want to point out one thing in the booklet I sent you. His cover letter, I think, is dated back a few months back, but I want to make it very clear that I received his application and his resume recently, since the last time I talked to you. So I don't know if that's a cover letter that he was working off, a template that he was working off of, or something like that from back in whenever it was dated. But I want to be very clear that this is a new application to me, that I've never worked with Mr. Perry before. So I'm learning about him as you are, as far as his interest level and his experience. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and jump to our next candidate real quick, and then I'll be glad to circle back and answer questions that the council may have. Don Rosenthal is our next candidate. Mr. Rosenthal most recently was employed by Pasco County, Florida, as assistant county administrator from 2014 to 19, and then as the commercial redevelopment project liaison from 2020 to 2021. He recently separated from the county. Prior to that, he worked for the city of Atlanta, prior to that, city of Reno, and before that in Illinois as a director of community development and director of code services. He does have his MBA in finance and accounting, as well as his bachelor's in psychology and military science from Loyola University. I have not worked directly with Mr. Rosenthal as a candidate in my years of doing this. However, I recognize his name as being part of the Pasco County group. I actually did the recruitment for county manager in Pasco, probably 2012, 13, maybe. So the person I placed in Pasco hired Mr. Rosenthal as assistant county manager. So we have some connection there, but again, I do not know him personally. I found him to be very professional. We had a good conversation. I will also point out he is a credentialed manager, certified manager through ICMA. That is a really big deal. There's a lot of training, you have to have experience, you have to have training, and you have to have continuing education in order to be able to apply as a credentialed manager. And then you have to continue that education piece as well as experience piece as you go each year. It's a big commitment of time and of resources to get that certification from ICMA. That said, as you can see, he started out with Downers Grove in Illinois. And I think this is where he really got the bug for development and for moving up the ladder, if you will. When he was there, the community had houses that were selling for 25% under surrounding communities, which there was just no reason, or there was no rhyme or reason to it. He came in, he began to identify reasons for that. Primarily, there were a lot of apartments and people weren't taking care of properties as well as maybe homeowners would. And so he initiated a program with the city of Downers Grove to begin to improve properties so that property values would go up. And he mentioned several success stories. from the time he got there to the time he left, of people who ended up selling their properties that were initially 25% below others. They were then 25% above surrounding communities, and really made a dent in that community. And I think that's where he got the bug about, this is all about improving lives and improving communities, because he followed that really from there on out, including up to present day. City of Reno, he went in as building and safety manager, did some great things there. Their development department was just lagging, and it was all over the place. It wasn't customer service oriented. And he brought in a program called Oscilla. I don't know if you use that, but I would say he's pretty much a master at that program and understand all the components that flow into bringing development and bringing economic prosperity to a community, and spreading that evenly throughout the community, and understanding what it takes to make a community an asset and valuable, and just improving the overall quality of life in a community. He was very successful in Reno. He saw a job in Atlanta that had similar opportunities to what he had been doing, but a little bit larger, being the city of Atlanta. And he was there for 4 years, brought in millions and millions of additional funds to the city of Atlanta through how he went in and assessed the development department and the building department. Pasco County, he wanted to go up the ladder. He wanted to be an assistant county administrator, so he was hired on for that. But part of his focus was development in Pasco County. I don't know if you're familiar with Pasco County, but they have a lot of property. They have a lot of opportunity. And for a few years, I would say they floundered a bit. And that was sort of the charge that he had too. Their customer service, people just didn't want to do business with Pasco. That said, he came in, he sort of turned that around. He implemented customer service, strong customer service. And then in doing that, Pasco made a fast turnaround. It's one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Florida, certainly, and probably beyond. He talked about an area in Pasco called La Cucci, I believe is the correct pronunciation. It's the northeast part of Pasco. It was a former lumber mill. And the census tracks it as the poorest in the state of Florida. But they had access to a CSX Freightliner, utilities, and they ended up getting $7.7 million in rural 8 is what he called it, program funding, created 100 full-time jobs. Entire industrial area was revamped, 800 more jobs there over 7 years, and basically changed that particular area, that particular community within Pasco County, completely changed it. He also talked about the airport there. They have Zephyr Hills Airport. They had identified it as an underdeveloped municipal airport. And a few months later, through his efforts and orchestration, they built sewer. They expanded the runway by 600 feet to land corporate jets. He was in the ACM role for about 7 years, and there was a request for some information that was sent to one of his department directors, and I think there was a miscommunication on that, and she reported what was actually requested. But then it came up that the number she gave on permits was short. And the reason why that was, as I understand it, is that she was only asked for permits that had impact fees related to them. And that's the information she gave. So she did not give the permits that didn't have. So what that did is that kind of ballooned into something. And he said, it was an honest mistake, and that he wasn't going to discipline her or fire her for an honest mistake. She gave what was asked for. So that sort of put him on a little bit of an uneven keel with the current county administrator. The one that I placed had hired him, but she had retired and a new county administrator had come in. I think I'll dig more into that, but from what I've seen, and he gave me 3 of the county commissioners there to call, and I'll be glad to call them because I know them. But I believe that he handled that very professionally. what had ended up happening is the county administrator there sort of demoted him, if you will. The commissioners, as I understand it, did not want him fired. And so it was just an uncomfortable situation. And that's why you'll see he has the commercial redevelopment project liaison for the last year that he was there. After a year of being in that role, he said it was just uncomfortable, and he just decided he needed to move on to the next thing in his career, which is his hopes of being a city manager somewhere. Let's see. He would like to be in the 130s, high 130s if possible, as far as salary. He does want to stay in Florida. He wants to spend the next 8 to 10 years of his career as a city manager. He did mention that in 2019, that Pasco County won an award from the Builders Association in Pasco County for getting projects done, that he's very well liked amongst the developers in the building community in Pasco for all the improvements that he's made. He talked about, in the past, he's done things as far as capital improvements projects, sewers, roads, bridges, traffic repairs. He talked about Lake City, and he said that he just really recognized all of the potential, if you will. That said, there wasn't anything in his background that when I asked, and I asked a lot of specific things, he offered up that there wasn't anything there. I think if you read some of the newspaper articles, which I did, by the way, sometimes you get half the story, maybe 3/4 of the story. But I would certainly say he's definitely worth talking to, in my opinion. Again, a very professional manager, brings a lot of strengths that I think would be helpful to Lake City. And any concerns that, are out there relative to newspaper articles or background or past time with Pasco County, we're going to do references. We will talk to commissioners. We'll do whatever we have to make sure that we confirm and understand the exact circumstances there before he would move forward as a finalist. But I think it's definitely worth talking to as far as a video interview. Mr. Ventrusco is our next candidate. I wrestled with putting Mr. Ventrusco in last time around. He did apply first time. I did reach out to him and ask if he was still interested, and he said he was. He has subsequent, and I apologize, our summary here says 2019 to present. He left Milan, Missouri, I'm going to say January or February of this year. Even when I interviewed him at the end of last year, he already had let the mayor know that he was looking elsewhere. And I don't, I can't speak for Mr. Ventrusco of why he eventually left there, but he was obviously looking to leave anyway. And sometimes when people are looking elsewhere and their name pops up in the paper one too many times, a city will go ahead and make a decision like, why don't you go ahead and separate and go find a job instead of their city manager popping up in the paper all the time. And I suspect that's what it was. The reason that I was on the fence with him last time, and I think this has changed a little bit, is as you can see, a lot of his experience was in the Northeast. He was in Maine and New Hampshire, and Massachusetts even. But I gave this some thought and decided that I would pull him forward again for you to at least look at his resume. You didn't get to do that last time. And if you want to move him forward to video, he's worth a talk. He's a very professional manager. I think he could bring a lot of stability to Lake City. I will say that when I think about the New Hampshire versus Lake City, that's a big culture change going from the Northeast, Maine and New Hampshire and Massachusetts to Missouri. So I'm not as concerned about him acclimating to North Florida. If you can go from New England to Missouri, you know what culture shock is. And if there's any for him, I think he'd be able to make it with no problem. Most of the cities, while some of them have been different sizes, most of them have been full service that he has worked at. He worked in the private sector before government. In one of his early towns, Millbridge, I believe it was, they're full service, which is police, fire, water, and sewer. Madawaska, also full service. They had sewer, water, a large police force, ambulance services, so full service again. Where also I believe was full service, and most of the communities that he has been in have been full service. And when I say that, I'm just really highlighting police and fire, public safety, and utilities. He also had some zoning, land use, and infrastructure projects in several of his stops along the way. Many of the places that he went to, you might look at it and say, oh, he was only there a few years. Most of those cities, honestly, Limestone, for instance, I believe is one. They're on their third or fourth manager now, just since he left in 2017. So some of these communities were pretty, I'll say, volatile, not stable, if you will. And then let's see what else I want to let you know about him real quick. He talked about his management style, and I think it's what you're looking for and what you would expect in Lake City. Collaborative. He is wanting to remain in city management. I suspect that coming to Florida and a nice climate change would be a real plus for him. But he wants to be in it for some time. He didn't give me a 5 to 7 years, but I feel like that's probably what he's looking at. As far as background, nothing illegal, nothing unethical, no problems relative to a background check. And there was just really nothing that stood out about him as far as a concern. So in regard to looking for other opportunities, I feel certain that he probably is, but I don't know that he's in serious consideration or even being considered like interviewing or anything like that. I can verify that if you'd like. And the same with Mr. Rosenthal. He did not indicate that there were other opportunities that were lurking on the horizon that would, I'll say, interfere with our process in Lake City. Real quick, the one other candidate I want to mention was one that you did interview last time. And if you want to consider him further, and you may not, you obviously didn't moving forward with our last two candidates, but he did reach out to me recently and indicate that he's still very interested. He also sent me quite a few reference letters. It's Mr. Kaufman, Brian Kaufman, who was formerly with the Water Management District, and subsequent to that, he was formerly Madison County Administrator, and now he's working for Citrus County. He did send me some reference letters, even though I didn't ask for those at this stage of the game, and I did review them. And I would say he's still a viable candidate, in my opinion. The other thing I think I want to point out was that a few of his letters were from community members, specifically from the underserved community members, in my opinion, the African-American community, that he partnered with leaders in the community there in Madison County to make a difference and to help resources go where they needed to go for that community. And I think that was important for him that I relay that to you. So I wanted to make sure that I did that. So with that said, I think we may have received one more application in the last day or two. I did review that. And that was not someone that I would put forward or put ahead of any of the candidates that I'm putting forth to you tonight. So I've said a lot, Mayor and council members, and I guess what I would like to do is hear from you now about what I have shared with you, what your thoughts are, if you want to move anyone forward to video interviews, and who that would be and how soon we could do that.
I would like to do all three, and then I said I'd like to do a video interview with the first three, and then get y'all's input whether y'all would like to bring Mr. Kaufman back.
I think I would like to hear from the three. We interviewed Mr. Kaufman. I don't know. I think maybe we set up an interview for these three and then see where it goes from there. But I think we need to be timely, so I think Ms. Narlock said something like next week will be the earliest. So
Yes, sir.
what about early, like Monday, Tuesday?
Okay, right now, I could do Wednesday morning or Thursday afternoon. Or actually Thursday morning. Or Friday morning.
I can make it work, either one, whatever. And I would like to interview top three.
Okay. Any time we can go from there. Okay.
Okay, so you said the first you have Wednesday or
Wednesday
Thursday?
morning.
I think maybe if, see if,
Next week.
yeah, next week. Yes.
It'd be the 30th.
30th?
Yes.
Do you need a range of dates, Ms. Narlock?
I'm checking my calendar. I'm open next week. So if you could give me your preferred first date and then an optional second date, should we have any hard conflicts with candidates? I do not believe we will have hard conflicts with candidates, but it's always good to have a backup.
How about Wednesday morning or Thursday afternoon?
That's fine.
And last time, I think we started about 8:30,
Yes, sir.
the whole morning to do it.
Mayor, so the 30th, like 8:30 to 1?
Yeah.
And the 31st, starting at what time?
Say 1:30.
1:30 to 5?
Yeah.
What was that time?
8:30 to 1, because I do have depositions at 1:30 Wednesday. I've already figured it.
Renee, did you get that?
I did not. I'm sorry.
Okay. Wednesday, the 30th, 8:30 to 1. Or Thursday, the 31st, 1:30 to 5.
Great. That's great. Thank you so much, Council. Thank you, Mayor. I believe that's, we're moving quickly enough, and we can then begin to look at the next date of on-site interviews. If we determine there's someone in these video interviews that we want to bring on site, the sooner we get that date on the calendar, the better off for everybody. I need at least a week in between their video interviews and their in-person interviews, just so if they have conflicts, they can clear those up. So if everyone will be looking at that, and Audrey, I will circle back with you to see what potential dates we have for actual on-site interviews again.
I could do Friday, if we did the meet and greet Friday, and then Saturday morning to night.
Or April 8th, Friday the 8th,
Yeah, and Saturday the 9th. Saturday
the
morning.
9th.
That's the meet and greet.
Yeah.
Renee, did you get that?
Friday the 8th, Saturday the 9th for Friday evening meet and greet and interviews on Saturday. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Okay. Wonderful. Does anyone have any, council or mayor, do you have any questions or are we good?
I'm good. Anybody got anything? Thank you very much. I really appreciate how hard you're working to do this, and I know you really worked hard and been thorough with it, so I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that's finished. We have item A, which is discussion possible action fire pension board appointee. Still don't have anybody, and same with number 9. Keep looking at those. Item 10 is removal, relocation of benches in central business corridor.
Mr. Mayor, so there's 19 benches from this intersection here at Marion and 90 going to the railroad tracks. 6 of them are definitely not where they were intended to be. There's 4 that face inward. There's 1 that's been moved out in the dirt, and there's some that moved up to the building. They're not where they were intended to be. I mean, I would think that the best place for those 19 benches would be in, Young's Park or Sally Mae Jerry Park, or a park where someone could utilize them. I think from talking to people who own businesses on the Central Business District, they're not so happy with the benches as well, because it's really not anything but an eyesore over time. They're not staying located. They're getting moved around. I wouldn't get rid of them. I would just say, let's relocate them. Maybe we could even take some of them, because we got a bunch of them. Maybe we could see if Andy Maddox would want some for the park. Maybe put some in Sally Mae, because one thing about a bench in a park is while you're watching your kids play, it gives you a place to sit. I mean, that's a good thing. When you got a bench down here that's looking at the old car dealership that's now the ice cream place, and it's looking at the building, I don't know what purpose that serves when it's right up on the street. I mean, to me, it looks like it serves the purpose of getting shade, so you got a good place to sleep.
I haven't had a chance to go all the way down and look at all of them. I'd like to do that. And if we could bring this back up at the next.
I would be fine with that. I think it'd be good to go drive down and see where they're at. And now I'm not talking about these in a Lusty Park. There's a bunch here.
Right.
There's 3 over here by Kirkendall's building. That's off to the side. I'd probably not mess with those. And I know Marion Street has his own benches, but he moves them in and out as needed.
And you've talked to
I've talked to several, not all. I've talked to several, but I think that's a good thing. I think reach out.
I'd like to.
You I've talked to have been very positive about that.
Relocate. Okay. I'm good with doing that. So we'll table this till next time, and then everybody maybe can take it.
Yeah, I think I'll take a ride and check out the locations.
Look at the one all the way down at the end. They moved it. It's all the way up. It's not quite to the railroad track, but it's right there by the light, out in the dirt.
All right. The next item is discussion possible action on Lake Montgomery Pier, and that's got me. Florida Game Commission came to me a year or 2 ago about doing this, and Chris was interested in it. He reapproached me and said that they had obtained $150,000. They thought they could do it for 3. And then they had meetings with, I've met with them, the county's met with them, the TDC. And the county, I believe, last week committed 75. And the TDC committed 10. So I'd like to see us do 75, and I think that would get us pretty close to the thing. That's the city getting a pier for 75 instead of 300 and something ourselves. Now, everybody knows George Hudson, and he's been at every meeting, I think, and he's had his concerns about trash and people out there, and one of the big issues was the traction. We need to do that and the maintenance of it, but I think they've kind of changed from a wood dock to a aluminum. And I've talked to Chief Butler about the patrolling and keeping, the closing the park at some time early in the evening. And we've talked about gating it. And he said there's several options we could use to do that, maintain that. So that would be my recommendation to the council.
So, Mr. Mayor, this being in my district and getting a lot of feedback from people that live there and that walk there, there's several things for me to support this that need to be in place. First and foremost, no lights at all be added to the park. It needs to close at dark. There needs to be a fence with a gate that closes and locks automatically. In addition to that, we need to have some kind of maintenance schedule, because I mean, just add more work to our employees to say, now you got an extra thing to clean up. Right. What's the cost of that to the city? I can't tell you.
Right.
So I can't look and say, first, and also the county made sure to note, because I talked to Mr. Krause about this, their 75,000 includes the 10,000 from TDC. It's not separate. So they're going to drop theirs to 65 and get the 10. That's my understanding from Mr. Krause. So I know that's not how it was intended, but that's how it's going to be. Okay. So until we address the cost of that fence, the cost of the gate, no lights, close it dark, maintenance costs, I think we're a little bit early. I think this might be a good thing where we can go back to the county and say, you know, maybe we need a meeting just on this between the city and the county.
Okay.
Maybe we need to have a council and a commission meeting just about this pier because, you know, the clean out, let me give you a good example. The clean out going down to the lake, it's horrible. And I know now that's in, Tim Murphy's district. I spoke to him about it because, you know, some of that's DOT maintained. And we need to make sure that there's maintenance going on ongoing, that the city's not getting stuck with the bill. If we can do it right, I can support it, but it's not gonna be at night having lights and being open for everything. I mean, we already got too many people living in there now that don't need to be living there. I really appreciate if we could take that one dude that's been living there the last 2 to 3 months and move him on somewhere else. Because it's not safe. It's not safe to have someone there that close to residential areas that's just staying in there.
The issue of timing is that the game commission money has to be committed by July 1st.
So I would say, let's see if they want to have a joint meeting pretty quick on their time. I mean, I'm flexible. Because there's gonna need to be more money applied than the 70-something thousand.
I would like to see us if we, I don't know if we could put it together for maybe next Monday evening, because.
I mean, it doesn't matter to me, but there's some things to address. I mean, I'm reading in the paper, we've committed to like sidewalks and stuff. I don't know where the cost of that's coming from.
I think that would be done in-house, Mr. Warren.
Sylvester Warren, Mayor Council. And talking about the pier, Councilman Sampson, is it still your position that with the picnic tables and the benches and the things that would draw people to be there past a certain time in that discussion, I think me, you, David, that those things would be removed? I know I didn't hear that come up in discussion. I know I just
that's part of it. So the fence with the gate that's gonna lock, making sure that it's emptied out by the whoever that does that. And then again, no place for people to be living on benches and stuff. So all that needs to go wherever it would go. So
no problem.
That's what gets me to the point where I can support it. Otherwise, I mean, if it's free, it's still not a good deal if we're gonna have to pay to maintain it. I'd like to know from staff what it's gonna cost us to maintain that, because that's another person, that's another, that's going by there, because, I mean, we don't need any more trash in there. There's enough trash from people in the boats that come in and throw it in. So let's try and not make more trash. And it comes off the street too, because people litter in the street. And let's have all of the partners at the table, maybe FWC, or is that who you said?
Yeah.
Got the money? If we could put a meeting together with the city council, the county commission, FWC, like a joint meeting, let's hammer out the details and get them all down, because it's not just a pier, it's other things involved.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're open to it, I mean.
6. Let me see what I can do for that date. Let's get a backup date. Let's see, that'd be next week. 28, 30.
That's not a lot of time.
Let's see.
I'd propose it closer to the end of the week, maybe.
All right, let me get my calendar here.
You just tell me when to be there.
We're doing, how about, you know, we got the video maybe on Thursday afternoon, but
That'd be fine. Let's just do it the whole day.
Wednesday evening.
That's fine too.
I'll get with the county to see what we can do as far as Monday, or Wednesday or Thursday. That would give us more time. That gives everybody
Thursday evening or
Wednesday evening or Thursday.
I think time is of the essence, because I see we're already spending all this money in the paper, not an agreement yet, so.
Right. Okay. Yes, sir.
I do have a project homeowners. I'm concerned that, anytime that we consider Canada, it's like 50-50. You know, we are Canada, and we also citizens. And I don't buy into the idea that cities should pay 50% in taxes. We're contributing to both taxes.
Right.
City taxpayer and the county taxpayer. So I'm saying that our share in this should be separate tax. I do think it should go ahead and say, okay, if 75 from the county, 75 people, it's not we finance stuff, you can tax for what?
And back to that point, that we have more maintenance, is we're gonna be maintenance, it's gonna be the police department taking care of it. It's gonna be the calls coming from city employees to clean it up. So, you know, I had a discussion not dissimilar from that with, Mr. Kraus about that very thing, because there was an item in the paper about the cost of maintenance and what we were gonna be taking on or not taking on. And I said, look, you know, the county's got a lot bigger budget. We're all county residents. I think y'all could, why does it have to be 50-50? You know, just.
All right, well, let's have a joint meeting. Find out. Okay, new business. We have city council on 2022-2214 on first reading, Mr. Caroline.
An ordinance of the City Council of City Lake City, Florida, amending the city code relating to the cleaning of the lots, providing for amendments to Division 5 titled Lot Cleaning Code of Article 7 of Chapter 22 of the City Code, providing for compatibility with Florida statutes, providing for the repeal of conflicts, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing an effective date, period.
Is there a motion to adopt city council ordinance 2022-2214? First reading.
I need a motion, to adopt City Council Resolution number 2020-2214 on its first reading.
Second.
Been a motion and a second, any discussion by council? South Beach, call the roll.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill? Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mayor Witten?
Yes. Notice the city council ordinance 2022-2217 first reading. Mr. Caroline, read that back.
An ordinance of the City of Lake City, Florida, amending ordinance number 91-688 as amended, relating to an amendment to the text and future land use plan map series of the City of Lake City Comprehensive Plan pursuant to application CPA 22-01 by the City Council under the amendment procedures established in sections 163.3161 through 163.3248 Florida statutes as amended, providing for amending the text and future land use plan map series of the comprehensive plan based upon an evaluation completed by the city to reflect changes in state requirements pursuant to section 163.3191 Florida statutes as amended, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt city council ordinance 2022-2217?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adopt City Council Ordinance 22-2217 on the first hearing.
Second.
Been a motion and a second, discussion by council?
Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mayor Witten?
Yes. Item 14, the city council, ordinance 2022-2218. Read that back to
An ordinance of City of Lake City, Florida, amending the future land use plan map of the City of Lake City Comprehensive Plan as amended, relating to an amendment of 50 or less acres of land pursuant to an application CPA 22-02 by the property owner of said acreage under the amendment procedures established in sections 163.3161 through 163.3248 Florida statutes as amended, providing for changing the future land use classification from county residential low density to city commercial of certain lands within the corporate limits of City Lake City, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt city council ordinance 2022-2218?
Mr. Mayor, move for the adoption of ordinance number 2022-2218 on its first reading.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Witt?
Yes. Next is City Council Ordinance 2022-2219. First reading, Mr. Copeland, will you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City of Lake City, Florida, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Lake City land development regulations as amended, relating to the rezoning of less than 10 contiguous acres of land pursuant to an application Z 22-01 by the property owner of said acreage, providing for rezoning from county residential single-family to commercial intensive of certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Lake City, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date.
Is there a motion to adopt City Council Ordinance 2022-2219?
Mr. Mayor, move for the adoption of resolution, on ordinance number 2022-2219 on its first reading.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mayor Witt?
Yes. Next is City Council Ordinance 2022-2220 on first reading. Mr. Copeland, will you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City of Lake City, Florida, relating to unlawful activity within public roads and rights of way, amending Chapter 98 of the City of Lake City Code to increase the fines associated with activities that interfere with public safety and the primary purpose of public roads and rights of way, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for codification, and providing an effective date.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the City Council Ordinance 2022-2220?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adopt City Council Ordinance 2022-2220 on the first reading.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mayor Witt?
Yes. Next is City Council Ordinance 2022-2221 on first reading. Mr. Copeland, will you read that by title?
An ordinance of the City Council of City Lake City, Florida, amending the city code relating to the minimum standards code, providing for amendments to Division 1 titled, quote, "in general," end quote, of Article 7 of Chapter 22 of the city code, providing for compatibility with Florida statutes, providing for the repeal of conflicts, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing an effective date, period.
Is there a motion to adopt City Council Ordinance 2022-2221?
Mr. Mayor, move for approval of ordinance number 2022-2221 on its first reading.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Witt?
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution. Resolution now 2022-027. Mr. Copeland, would you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of City Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of task assignment 17 with Passbro Associates LLC for professional services, providing for the construction, administration, construction monitoring, and quality assurance of materials during the resurfacing of runway 5-23 at the Lake City Gateway Airport, providing for a total cost not to exceed $92,200.00, and providing for an effective date, period.
Mr. Brad Wenty's here from Paso Road. He's been patient with us and we appreciate you.
Thank you, Mayor. So this project, Pastoral Associates finalized the design late last year. The project went out to bid. We opened bids in January earlier this year. New council's already approved the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, was Anderson Columbia. What this is tonight is for the consultant, full-time resident project representative services, construction admin, the quality assurance and field testing, which we perform by Caltech testing. Just wanted to point out this is funded in part with the 80-20 grant through the Florida Department of Transportation, Public Transportation Grant Agreement. It's like 80% for the state and 20% local. So.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to City Council Resolution 2022-027?
Mr. Mayor, I approve resolution 2022-027.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mayor Webb?
Yes. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Brad.
Next is item 19, City Council Resolution 2022-029. Read that.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the city's participation in the Indo settlement as described by the Florida Attorney General, providing for the city's participation in the settlement agreement with Indo Health Solutions Incorporated and Indo Pharmaceuticals Incorporated, providing for the mayor's execution of the participation agreement and providing for an effective date, period.
Is there a motion that the City Council Resolution 2022-029?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of resolution number 2022-029.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, so I don't see what the amount is that would be in the agreement. Is that to be determined later, I assume, out of that 55 million?
Yes, sir. The amount will be 0.1%. There is a table down in the, really far back in the exhibits, and it'll show you the percentage, and the amount, of course, won't be known until they know all the participants.
And they're still working out, I guess, the cost maybe?
That would likely be argued separately, but it may be included.
Okay.
But this is similar to the opioid litigation that's in the federal courts. They have to get the number of participants included. So the damages are based on how many residents are in each participant's geographic area.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Webb?
Yes. Next is City Council Resolution 2022-030. Mr. Caroline, can you read that by title?
Give me just a minute, Mayor. Get that page. Mayor, I clicked on the link that was in the resolution to answer Mr. Sampson's question, and it's not taking me back to the agenda, so I'll need.
Yeah, that link's a hijack. It's still downloading the 2,000 pages.
Thank you. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, authorizing the exchange of parcels of land with Florida Gateway College to clear up ambiguities in ownership and use of the parcels, implementing the terms and conditions of the agreement dated June 4th, 1991, between the city and the United States of America Federal Aviation Administration, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date, period.
Mr. Caroline, I noticed airport manager had some questions about this one. Do you think they're all resolved?
I'm not exactly sure what the questions are. I know that the Gateway College, through their council, requested the city to work through implementing the agreement when they noticed that it had not been implemented since 1991. So we did request to see if there were legal descriptions of the parcels that were to be exchanged, and there were no records of that exchange or of those legal descriptions. That was an effort to save money. This resolution is to go forward with sharing the cost of the legal descriptions. I did discuss this with the airport director who called me on Friday.
Right.
I do not know what the other concerns are. We've been looking at it for a few months and no concerns have been raised. I'm not sure what they are, so I cannot answer your question specifically.
Paul, do you know anything about this?
Yes, sir. In conversations with Ms. Stroud, she hadn't been involved in the process and she thought this was going to be an ongoing thing. And she has concerns based on the FFA and regulations. And she also has some concerns about maybe the contamination on some of these parcels. She by no means wants to stop the process. She just wants to have a little extra time to be able to research it with FFA and also to look at any soil samples or anything that might be on these properties to make sure the city is not in some kind of a liability when we acquire these properties. She was just basically wanting to do a little bit more due diligence on the property and just give it a little bit more time that she had time to look at it.
Is there any reason that we need to move forward, or could we table it, look into these issues, and she's not here tonight?
Mayor, if those are the issues, I do not have any concerns going forward. The college has already done an ESA 1 on contamination. And if someone's willing to take your property, knowing that there may be contamination on it, then that's generally a gift. Now, in this circumstance, again, you're going for the legal descriptions, and the FAA has already approved the agreement. So I do know that Ms. Stroud may not have been involved because the past administration had been working on this for some time.
All right.
Again, moving forward, eventually deeds would have to come back to the city council if you go that far. At this point, it's a cost sharing agreement to share the cost of the surveys.
Okay, so that's what we're doing now, is just getting the legal.
That's correct. I think that the administration, it would behoove the administration as well as the council, as the administration would contact Gateway College to see, to learn the history.
Brad, on this, and I think you're familiar with what this is. I don't know if Ms. Stroud.
I'm a little reluctant to stick on this.
I agree.
But it's the description. She points her out to show that she was concerned about the documents going back. Wanted to make sure that fully coordinated with.
If we're just doing the legal description, I think we got time. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, so the legal descriptions in the 91 agreement are not correct, or we're just going to do a survey to make sure they're correct? Is that what we're looking at?
It's my understanding they did not connect at the end.
Okay, so it doesn't close.
That's right.
Is there a motion on City Council Resolution 2022-030?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion on City Council Resolution 2022-030.
I'll second it.
There's my motion and second. Any discussion further? Ms. Sykes, please call the roll.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Webb?
Yes. Next is 21, City Council Resolution 2022-031. Caroline, you read this by title.
A resolution of City Council of City Lake City, Florida, authorizing the execution of task assignment number 2 to the continuing contract with North Florida Professional Services Incorporated, Florida Corporation, providing for engineering services related to the repairs of Memorial Stadium, providing for payment for the professional services at a cost not to exceed $28,050.00, and providing an effective date period.
Is there a motion on City Council Resolution 2022-031?
Mr. Mayor, I approve, make the motion to approve resolution 2022-031.
Second.
There's a motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Sykes, please call the roll.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Sampson?
Yes.
Mayor Webb?
Yes. Now we add on items of 2022-032. Caroline, can you read that by title?
A resolution of the City Council of City Lake City, Florida, approving a final plat as authorized under Section 5.18 of the City of Lake City Land Development Regulations, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date.
Is there a motion as to 2022-032?
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of resolution number 2022-032.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Ms. Ox, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor, just want to verify that we're doing that motion as an emergency.
Oh, yeah, it is an emergency.
Mr. Jefferson, you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Witt?
Yes. And the same with item 2022, -033. Mr. Caroline, you read that by title.
A resolution of the City Council of City Lake City, Florida, authorizing the acceptance of a deed from Columbia County, Florida for a drainage easement associated with the construction of a fire station and providing an effective date, period.
Okay, is there a motion as to 2022-033?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion on City Council Resolution number 2022-033
Emergency.
as an emergency item.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Sykes, you call the roll.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mayor Witt?
Yes. Okay, Departmental Administration, discuss with possible action, safety risk manager position, Mr. Collins.
Council members, thanks for having me. I'll be brief. As you're aware, employees work with many different types of equipment to weed all of those. And adding to that, they're working in conditions of chemicals and in and around the city. Right now, we don't have a full-time safety. So I propose to take the funding that we have for the director of growth management and divert that funding so we can begin to look for a city manager. That's what I propose. Look for what? I'm sorry. Safety manager. Safety manager. I'm sorry, safety manager.
Okay, any questions by council? Second.
So this is the removal of the director of growth management. That's what we're doing.
We'll leave that headcount.
I'd say the receiver in the back.
And just divert the funding to another headcount. It's already in the budget for safety risk management. We don't want to change the headcount, just divert the funding so we can build this one.
So we're adding a position, leaving the old position, but we're defunding that position.
Funding one position and transferring the funding to another position.
Does this have any effect on what we're looking for with someone to do the role of planning and zoning?
No, sir. Basically what it is, the growth management position was funded for this year after Dave left. The safety risk manager position was left in the budget. It was just unfunded. Our intent is to leave both positions and bring them back before the council during the budget negotiations. And to fund either both positions fully, what we want to do is reclassify safety risk to a manager instead of a director, since it's only one person. And then let the council decide during the budget process if we want to leave it would be my suggestion to leave the growth management position there and maybe fund it for the full year or half a year, depending on how we want to move forward with the county and see how all that's working. It's not actually adding a position. They're already there. We just haven't funded that.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion for City Council to approve reclassification of the unfunded Director of Safety Risk position to a Safety Risk Manager position and to fund the position with the budgeted funds for the current unfilled Director of Growth Management.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll?
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mayor Witt?
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Comments of council, brief comments. Got it? All right, we're adjourned. Thank y'all. Thanks to everybody coming.